The big film later tonight is codenamed Zebra, starting at 12:35. Now, the morning news.
From the studios of ITN, the news with Dennis Tuohy.
Good morning. The headlines. Mandy Allwood loses all her babies, but says she's no regrets about her pregnancy. The Middle East summit ends with nothing agreed but a pledge to keep talking. And questions are raised about the danger of supermarket chicken. Mandy Allwood, the woman who lost all 8 of the babies she was carrying, says she would do exactly the same thing again. Miss Allwood, who'd had fertility treatment, went ahead with the full pregnancy against medical advice. The last 5 miscarried or were delivered stillborn yesterday. 6 were boys, 2 girls. Our health editor Lawrence McGinty reports from King's College Hospital in London.
For 2 days and 2 nights in King's College Hospital in London, Mandy Allwood has fought to keep the 8 babies she's been carrying for 19 weeks. But with almost every hour that passed, her hopes were dashed repeatedly. The end of this tragic tale, a sad announcement that she'd lost the last 4 surviving babies.
2 were delivered around 3 o'clock, and the last 2 were delivered around 4 o'clock this afternoon. 2 of the babies were girls and 6 were boys.
I really didn't know how quickly they would take place. And yes, I think I was perhaps surprised. I think I was asked earlier, would it be hours or days? I thought it would be days. But clearly, I'm a little bit surprised it was hours rather than more. Mandy certainly this afternoon became more and more distraught and disappointed when it was becoming clear that we were moving towards a final conclusion for all 8.
Mandy's pregnancy has been controversial ever since she sold her story to a newspaper after rejecting advice from her doctors to abort some of the embryos to give the others a better chance.
It's hard to know whether, if the spotlight hadn't been on Mandy, whether she would have chosen differently. But she has the right to choose. She has the right, just as a man has, to not accept the advice she's given by her doctor.
The anti-abortion group Life said they were saddened by events, but said Mandy had made the right choice.
Mandy knows that she tried her best, that she looked after them as best as she could. She did what a mother should do. She tried to protect all of them, and she didn't allow any of them to be deliberately killed. And I think she was very courageous and very pro-life.
Mandy's publicist, Max Clifford, said she had no regrets, and he was going to continue to do his job.
Just as I'm talking to media people worldwide, and will be tomorrow and probably for the next 2 or 3 days, because this has created, as I say, huge media interest worldwide, and there's a lot of people worldwide that want to talk to Mandy.
In King's College Hospital, Mandy is recovering from a trauma that few others can understand.
Hundreds of Israelis will today stage a symbolic walk through the tunnel near a mosque in Jerusalem, whose opening led to Palestinian rioting. Israeli right-wingers will also travel in a convoy to Hebron to demand continued Jewish control of the city. Both events may lead to more violence in the West Bank and Gaza. Last night, the White House summit on the Middle East ended with agreement on only one point, the need to hold more negotiations. James Mates reports from Washington.
The President of the United States, accompanied by...
They have talked for 2 days. Their officials have worked through the night in a vain search for common ground. But for all the American pressure, the 4 leaders emerged to announce no agreement, just more talks. President Clinton candidly admitted there had been no meeting of minds.
They were not able to resolve their differences here, but to be fair, when we came together, there were no advance guarantees that there would be large-scale substantive negotiations. When we compare where we are today with where we were a week ago, are we in better shape? Yes. Are we where I'd like to be? No, but we will get there, I think, if we keep working, yes.
Yasser Arafat and Benjamin Netanyahu looked on in silence, barely acknowledging one another. Between these 2 men, there is no warmth, no personal relationship, no common view on sharing their corner of the Middle East. On the question of when Israel would keep its promise to withdraw from the Palestinian city of Hebron, no progress. Instead, the Israelis demanded Arafat put on trial policemen who shot at Israeli troops last week, Again, stalemate, and a blank refusal from Israel to close the tunnel in East Jerusalem that sparked off this whole crisis.
I would be happy to have them make a brief statement.
Perhaps not surprising then, they declined an invitation to speak at the press conference.
But I have silenced the voices.
And when a handshake was suggested,
Are you allowed to shake hands? Shake hands.
they said not a word, but the body language was deafening. Perhaps conscious of the message they were sending back home, the two men later contrived to say goodbye like old friends. But even as they were leaving, Palestinian spokesmen were speaking of this summit as a total failure. Israeli officials, by contrast, are claiming victory, boasting they've conceded nothing. And indeed, they haven't. There will be more talks, certainly, but the central issue in those talks will be the future of the city of Hebron, an issue the Palestinians thought had been negotiated and agreed upon more than a year ago. James Mates, ITN, Washington.
The trial continues today of a self-employed lorry driver charged with murdering the French student Céline Figard last Christmas. Stuart Morgan, who's pleaded not guilty, was said by the prosecution to have raped, beaten and strangled Céline. He then hid her body behind the driving seat of his lorry for 10 days before he dumped it. ITN's Robert Hall reports from Worcester Crown Court.
They had travelled hundreds of miles to face fresh reminders of their daughter's death. Céline Figard's parents will hear every detail of the case against lorry driver Stuart Morgan. 19-year-old Céline, bright and popular, had left her village on the Franco-Swiss border to improve her English. Morgan was an owner-driver from Poole in Dorset. The prosecution claim he met the teenager at this busy service area and offered her a lift. She was due to visit a cousin working in a New Forest hotel, but never arrived. Her body was found at a lay-by near Worcester 10 days later. She'd been raped, beaten and strangled. With Céline's parents listening intently, prosecuting counsel David Farrer told jurors there were significant discoveries linking the accused to the murder. Among them a blood-stained mattress found in his garage, blood spots in his lorry matched to Céline, and items of her property allegedly given to his friends. It's claimed that by the time Morgan reached his destination at Southampton docks, Céline was already dead. The court heard that evidence suggested the body had been left in Morgan's lorry as he celebrated Christmas with his family. He had dumped it soon after his return to work, allegedly altering his tachograph to hide the detour.
The consumer magazine Which claims this morning that many chickens on sale in supermarkets are unfit for human consumption, and it wants urgent action by the poultry industry. The Which report said 32 out of 90 birds bought from 8 leading supermarket chains fell short of legal standards, and half contained bacteria which could cause food poisoning. The supermarkets have defended their quality standards. Tim Nielsen reports.
Which magazine sent a poultry meat inspector to 8 leading supermarkets where he bought 90 chickens or chicken portions. On inspection, 1 in 3 were judged to be unfit for human consumption as defined by the law. 12 birds had severe bruising, 2 were diseased, 9 chickens were contaminated either with intestinal or fecal matter, and others had either not been bled properly, had excessive feathers, skin infections, or had not been properly gutted. In separate tests, 160 more fresh and frozen chickens were bought. Over half were found to have salmonella or bacteria which can cause food poisoning. Which say the poultry industry needs to improve the rearing, slaughtering and inspection of chickens, and supermarkets should do more to ensure that unfit chickens are not put on sale. After the report, Tesco and Safeway say they had stringent quality controls and their chickens were safe to eat. Sainsbury's promised to look again at their products, whilst Marks and Spencer's, which sells 1 million chickens a week, said they were concerned. Tim Nielsen, ITN.
The former Tory Minister Neil Hamilton has denied allegations in this morning's Guardian that he received undisclosed gifts from lobbyist Ian Greer. The Guardian said the MP and his wife charged payments for furniture to an account kept by Mr Greer's firm. But Mr Hamilton has admitted receiving £10,000 from Mr Greer to pay for business introductions. Yesterday, the row over parliamentary sleaze embroiled over 20 other MPs whose election campaigns were helped by Mr Greer. Adrian Britton reports.
The lobbyist Ian Greer was setting out his case in the studios of Westminster as the latest revelations added another twist to the furore over political funding. had he taken money from Mohammed Al-Fayed to help fund the election campaigns of 24 MPs?
This man certainly did pass me no money at any time. I categorically deny it. It would have been a corrupt act. And I'm not a corrupt person, and my company isn't corrupt.
Yet through his spokesman, the Harrods boss issued a defiant rebuttal, saying Mr. Greer had asked for money, claiming you could hire MPs the same way as you hire a taxi.
Mr. Greer approached Mr. Al-Fayed and said he needed money for some of the MPs who were going to be fighting the 1987 general election. Mr. Al-Fayed agreed to give him money. He gave him 2 checks, one for 12,000 and one for 6,000 drawn on his personal account.
There's no suggestion Mr. Greer's payments bought the services of any MPs, and providing they didn't exceed constituency spending limits, they were legal. But a confidential Conservative Central Office memo demonstrates the party's concern